Welcome to tonight's presentation about the Rails to Trails Conservancy. My name is Nan Allen, and standing next to me is Dan Boron from the city of Springboro. This is the part 3 of a 4-part series in partnership with the city of Springboro, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and the Franklin Springboro Public Library. I'll start with a couple announcements. If you would please turn off your cell phones at this time. And restrooms are located through this back door and down the hallway. Our presenter, Eric Oberg, is the Director of Trail Development, Midwest Regional Office of the Rails to Trails Conservancy. Eric gained his appreciation and love for the outdoors being born and raised on Kodiak Island, Alaska. His trail interest was picked when he and his girlfriend, who is now his wife, trained long-distance sled dogs near Denali National Park for 3 years. He turned his love of trails into a career, leading to trail building crews in Denali for 6 years. Through the Rails to Trails Conservancy, he has worked extensively throughout the Midwest and the entire country on trail projects of all shapes and sizes. I'll now turn it over to Eric as he shares how it all started, what's happening now, and plans for the future.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. What an awesome facility, by the way. I can't, all the bells and whistles up here at the podium. I was like, whoa, man, this beats a whole lot of crazy, creaky basements I've given presentations in. So if you're a member of this community, thank you for supporting your local libraries. For God's sake, it's a wonderful thing, and it's wonderful to be here. You can see why I started the screen with that, because my slide presentation's first slide is not so pretty. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who RTC is, RTC, Rails to Trails Conservancy. A quick, some folks don't know who the heck we are. What are we working on, and a little bit about where we are. What is the future of where you live? We are the largest trail organization in the country. We're 33 years old. We were started in, actually almost 34, 1986. When we opened our doors, there were 200 miles of rail trail in the country. There's more than 26,000 miles now. So when people say, well, I mean, is it something that's popular? People still at home are like, well, what are you doing? But so come to the lower 48 states. It's a thing, believe me. But we do actually have an issue. We're the largest trail organization in the country, but we still only have about 40 to 50, it fluctuates, employees around the country, which is not a lot. So we have 2 people in the Midwest office, me and 1 other person. So it's not abnormal. It happens not on a daily basis, but multiple times a week the phone rings and I'm getting a question. Frankly, a lot like this. Hey, can you come present at our this or that? Sure, where are you? Duluth. Like, yeah, man, I'd love to be there tomorrow, but it's not going to happen. So it is nice, like, Springboro, yeah, that could happen. Springboro, you bet. So we do run into that, where we have a pretty big footprint. People know who we are. We get a lot of interaction around the country, but we're not as accessible to most of the country. I don't get to do this in a lot of places. I can't go to Duluth on a Tuesday just because they want me there. But we do have, there's more than 1 million people that we have direct access to. I'm not going to lie to you. It's your email addresses these days, Back when we opened our doors, it was about snail mail and sending out a solicitation in an envelope and saying, please join our cause. And, that cost money. Every time you sent it out, it cost that stamp. And it's pretty cheap now to say, will you join this movement? And that's garnered 1 million email addresses that we can call on at any time. And I can tell you, your federal elected officials know it. They get upset sometimes when we unleash all of you on them. It's a beautiful thing. It really is, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's a fabulous thing. I want to tell you a little bit about our programmatic work now. When I started 13 years ago right here in Ohio, we really still worked like a retail organization, a retail nonprofit. It would, frankly, it was and it was typically not public agencies and municipalities that paid us as like a consultant to come help them with a trail project. It was more, I'll use it was a municipality like Springboro saying, we'd like to build a rail trail, but we don't know what it takes. We don't know how to do it. And they'd call our office and we'd say, well, if we can find some support to underwrite our time, we'll help you. And we'd go find a foundation. So we'd go to the Dayton Foundation, or we'd go to the Kettering Foundation, or we'd go to the Gun Foundation in Cleveland and say, hey, look, there's a community that needs help. We can provide that help, but we have to pay the bills too. And they'd give us a grant and we'd help do that. And it was very transactional, and it was very trail-to-trail retail service. And when I started, that's what we did. It was who needs help and where can we get the support to help them, and whatever we can learn along the way to pass on to other communities, that's what we would do. But it was very much a transactional relationship between us and individual trail projects. Luckily, I think I really love the evolution of this work, but since I've been here, because of the success of the movement, or municipalities, and I'll keep saying Springboro because we're here, but really it's universal almost anymore. The experience of public agencies in building trail has grown exponentially to the point that they don't need a nonprofit like RTC to come show them the way. How do you build a trail? Most places understand how to do it now. There's well-established, we're moving into almost 2 decades of the Clean Ohio Trail program here in this state. There's well-established programs that have helped communities build trails over the years, and there's so many good examples of great trails around that most communities that have the means and the will to build a trail don't necessarily need to come to us and say, how do we do it anymore? Which is great. As a nonprofit, you kind of hope that you work yourself out. You should be mission-based, and your mission should be helping people do what you believe in. You hope that you get them to a place that they don't need you anymore, which is a little bit scary because you work yourself out of a job. But it's, and that's really the way the whole trail movement has happened. That most communities don't need that retail kind of hand-holding through the process anymore. And that's awesome. I mean, that's really, it's success at the grandest scale. So we really, about 6-7 years ago, started saying, where's our value? If communities don't need that individual retail hand-holding, what do they need? And it was about the complexities of trail network development. It wasn't about building an individual trail. It was about how do you look at the trails you built, and how do you connect them into networks that matter, to where these trails aren't just fun places to go take a walk or a bike ride, but they're functional in a way that is more utilitarian. If I want to go to school, I want to go to work, I want to go run some errands, can I do that by walking or biking? How do we do that? How do we make functional networks? And we realize that's where the value here is. It's not in the individual trail. It's about how do we help, not communities, but really regions, exponentially grow the impact of their trails by making sure they have a functional network of walking and biking infrastructure. And that evolved into the Trail Nation portfolio of projects. The entire emphasis, or the entire reason for this is, A, we still only have 40 to 50 employees. We can't be everywhere for everybody. So we need to find projects that work on complex issues around the country in different geographies that are dealing with different issues locally, and use those as templates for teaching other places around the country. Because we can't do it everywhere. So we need to find places that have very unique differences, very unique problems in their trail development issues, and learn from them. We don't know all the answers either. Learn from these different communities, and then get that out to the rest of the country to say, here's how to tackle some of these complex trail development issues. So I'll go through some of the places we're doing this work. The circuit trails in Philadelphia and Camden, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. The Capital Trails Coalition in the greater Washington, D.C. area. Very purposefully chosen because the people who hold the purse strings at the federal level should have some place where they spend maybe too much of their time. They should see an example of what it looks like to be really good at this. So that's, and we also have a headquarters there, so I'm not going to lie. But there's 2 very good reasons for that one. Baltimore Greenway Trails Network. This one is very city-focused in a place that has a lot of really tough issues. Economically and socially right now, and that's been a wonderful project that we've learned so much from already. The Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition, this is one of the ones that I am very deeply involved in. The largest geographic scope, 4 states, 1,500 miles of multi-use trail, eastern Ohio, northern West Virginia, western Pennsylvania, and 1 county in New York, so we can call it 4 states. The Route of the Badger in southeast Wisconsin. This is Milwaukee Racine. We got to update that map. We just released the brand new network map. It's fabulous. The Bay Area Trails Collaborative talk about over 1,600 miles in the Bay Area. Again, teaching us not just about insane amount of distance with multi-use trail, but try building trail and place money on something so frivolous as a multi-use bike and walking trail. Well, you don't want to get me started over a family dinner, but hey, okay. Transportation, and I feel bad because most of you in this room are probably at least enthusiasts or like interested in this, or you wouldn't be here, so you probably know a lot of this, but hey, I'm going to throw it at you anyway. These aren't new statistics, but they don't get old. At the end of the day, our entire country is ridiculously addicted to being in a car. Half the trips that we take in America are under a 20-minute bike ride, and a quarter are under a 20-minute walk. You just talk about trying to turn a few of those over into bike rides or walks and what that can mean. And it's not just about vehicle miles traveled. It's not just about emissions. It's about you get out and walk a little or ride your bike a little. It's going to do a lot of good things for you too, okay? So save the planet, save yourself. There's a lot of things. Anyone that's got kids, I've got 2 kids. My goodness, the worst part of traffic's around school, at school time, morning, afternoon. I mean, it's 30+% in most communities. Your traffic is ridiculous around our schools. And it's because of that next piece. Kids used to walk or bike to school. They don't anymore. I'm not going to read the stat to you, and you all know it just by being in your communities today. And there's multiple reasons for that. You all know the reasons as well as I do. Some of them are unfounded fear about your kids being kidnapped, being this, being that. Some of it is because there actually isn't a safe way for them to walk or bike. That is true. The fear of safety and it's not about, I think, stranger danger. It is actually about the way we built our damn communities. It actually is worse in most of our communities for our kids to walk or bike to school because we've built them that way. We've also consolidated school districts to where every school is out in a cornfield 10 miles from town with no way to get there other than a car. Well, you pay a price for that. The land was cheap, and building that school was cheaper than putting it in town, but there were trade-offs. Here's part of your trade-off. I also hear, especially since I moved to Ohio, especially as a native of Alaska, I just die laughing when people say, why are you building walking and biking infrastructure in Ohio? We have winter here. Yeah, I sure wish I could experience one. I've been here 13 winters, and I still wonder what you call winter, but okay. Yeah, winter, right. Get to 40 below and tell me you have winter. So I'm a skeptic about Ohio winters still. I will tell you 28% of all trips in Minneapolis include walking and biking. So when someone in Ohio can tell me we have worse winters than Minneapolis, I'll buy into that. And we're not even talking about Anchorage or Fairbanks. So winters don't prohibit walking and biking. Infrastructure and attitude does. So I don't buy that either. I will say we've had some really good data in central Ohio, based around Columbus. We had a great researcher, a friend of mine from the University of Minnesota, came down and developed this whole new traffic counting program for central Ohio. And when we first introduced it in 2014, the whole purpose was to try to show metrics that traffic engineers show. Like, look, we want to play in the game with driving because we continually say, look, if you wouldn't drive so much and you'd walk or bike, you could do certain things. I said, well, let's try to create metrics for walking and biking that mirror the metrics they use for driving. Vehicle miles traveled is the holy grail for traffic engineers. Hey, we had so many million vehicle miles traveled. We need more travel lanes. We need more, we need another lane on the interstate. We need this, we need that. So we recreated that methodology for trails in central Ohio. And in 2014, there were 12 million miles traveled on the central Ohio Greenway trail system, which was pretty cool. And that's been steadily going up since. I also think there's a bit of an equity issue. I think we talk about driving, we talk about walking and biking, and people say, well, I'm not an athlete, I can't walk, I can't bike. Well, some people can't drive, frankly. You know? What about them? Over 10 million American households, this was more than 10 years ago, don't own an automobile. 40% of our adult Americans can't or don't drive. They're either disabled, elderly, there's a massive number of people who can't drive, but the argument is constantly about people, I can't walk or bike, I'm not an athlete, I'm not a this. Not everybody can drive either. So I think there's an equity issue around multimodal transportation. I love this just from a space transport. You know, I mean, we don't have room for trails. Well, I don't know. We could move a lot more people if we got them out of cars for certain. And quite frankly, I'd throw this into transit as well, right? I mean, the bottom line is 1 or 2 people per car is a pretty ridiculous way to get people around if space is one of our main issues, right? Economic benefits, and this gets poo-pooed a lot by a lot of people, irregardless of the growing body of research around the economic benefits of trails. And it continues to grow. I could go on and on and on about this particular slide. I haven't changed this slide much in years, frankly, because the story is the story. When you go to sell a house, you've got very few lines of text. Your realtor, their number one job is to get the most money they can for your house and sell it in the shortest amount of time, because that's how they get their money. They're on a commission, and the sooner they turn your house around for the higher price, the better their bottom line is going to be. The last thing they're going to do is blow smoke up a prospective buyer's behind, right? They don't frankly care what the sales pitch is as long as it gets to the sale. They're not gonna, I hope they're not lying, but they're going to try to put your property in the highest possible light. All right, on the left side, that's an $800,000 home in York, Pennsylvania. York, Pennsylvania is not downtown Philly. It is not downtown. I mean, York, Pennsylvania is a fine town. It really is. It's not Manhattan. It's not a place loaded with $800,000 homes. So this is a very upper income home in York, Pennsylvania. What do we got? 10 line items there about what makes this $800,000 home worth you buying. You can see in the first descriptor, 5 acres secluded, lot backs up to the rail trail. Also in those 5 bullet points, backs up to the, they had to say backs up to the rail trail twice. That realtor must think that will sell an $800,000 home in York, Pennsylvania, or they wouldn't be saying it twice. That upper one, for God's sake, they can't say anything about it except call me at this, I work for RE/MAX, 10 acres on the bike path. Not 10 acres on the creek, not 10 acres with an orchard, not 10 acres with a beautiful home, 10 acres on the bike path. My guess is they're not saying that because they think it's going to scare people away. Lower right, that is in just north of downtown Indianapolis along the Monon Trail. They're not even attempting to hide what they're selling. Trail view, it's built right on the trail. This is each of these townhomes are about $400,000 to $600,000 a piece, being sold as a way to walk or bike into your job in downtown Indianapolis. Come live at Trail View. It's kind of hard to not see the obvious, and it's happening more and more and more. There is an unbelievably cool development happening in downtown Columbus at the Quarry. If you've never heard of the Quarry, oh my God, just north of downtown, but I still consider it, you're inside 275, you're within 5 minutes of downtown. It's an old stone quarry with these beautiful, cool lakes. You know, the old quarries, when they're abandoned, they become those crazy, cool, blue, almost freaky blue lakes. That is being developed into this new multi-use, there's going to be retail and residential with multi-use trails that connect into the regional trail network. It's the coolest thing you've ever seen, and none of us would probably be able to afford to live there. But man, and they're totally selling it as you are living in the park on the trail with this active lifestyle. And going, oh, but yeah, trails are going to ruin your value. Yep. Long distance trails, the Great Allegheny Passage. This is the multi-use trail from Washington, D.C. that goes all the way to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania now. $50 million in direct annual spending and wages paid to employees at trailside businesses. $7.2 million in 2002. I mean, this is just, as that trail's been continuing to grow and expand and connect, and now it is 100% fully connected Pittsburgh to DC. They're seeing $50 million a year in direct impact. Just Three Rivers Heritage Trail, this is just Pittsburgh's local trail system. So this is not a lot of tourism dollars. People aren't traveling from around the world to ride that trail. $7 million just in people that either live in the Pittsburgh area or come spend a weekend, whatever. $7 million, that's not the worst thing. And I love this one because the study was actually financed by the state DOT. And I won't throw Ohio DOT totally under the bus because the last few years they've been doing really good work. But DOTs aren't typically the biggest fans of walking and biking. They've got typically transportation means, four wheels to them. So the North Carolina DOT, almost 10 years ago now, this is getting dated, but it's still such a fabulous study, mainly because they're the ones that paid for it. And even the people within DOT said they paid for this to try to disprove the fact that these things were so dang good. We're so tired of you guys telling us about trail development being such a positive impact. So they paid for this study and found the impact of cycling facilities there were more than 9 times the cost of building the facilities. So I love when someone that's trying to disprove something pays for a study and finds out that the study disproves their skepticism. It's a fabulous thing. Couple quotes here from, and these came from the Central Ohio Impact Study that we helped with. These are just business leaders and economic development leaders. I won't read them to you. You can see them. But leadership at local, regional, and state levels are really starting to understand what trail development means. We're all in a competitive environment for retaining residents, for recruiting residents, for recruiting business. At the end of the day, and it keeps getting more and more, people are more mobile than they've ever been. They can choose to live wherever they want to choose. The places people live now are less based on their employment than they are on choice. There's a lot more employment opportunities that you can do from anywhere. So your community needs to be competitive. And leaders that understand that realize walking, biking, trails, quality of life, that is what matters if you want to retain and recruit people and employers, period. That's it. And you won't go to a major American city or a really competitive region in this country where that's not pretty well understood at this point. If you don't understand that, you're probably behind the 8 ball. This one's depressing. I won't read it to you, but I'll go through it. We're not the healthiest place in the world. We're not the least healthy, but we're not that great. And frankly, in the entire country, Ohio's not exactly in the top of the statistics either. We've got some room to grow here. And a big part of the problem is we don't go outside. We don't walk to school. We don't walk to work. We don't ride our bikes. We don't go outside and play. We sit. We sit at work. We sit at home. We sit. And it's pretty pathetic. And it's not, frankly, it's plateaued. When I gave this 5-6 years ago, that trajectory was really bad. I will say that trajectory is not as bad as it was 5-6 years ago when it comes to obesity numbers and childhood obesity and chronic disease. It's not going down. It's just not going up as fast. So for what it's worth, we're doing better. We're just not doing good. And so at the end of the day, this, what I'm talking about and what we're trying to build in our communities really does have an impact on health. And it doesn't take a lot. Again, I won't read a slide to you. Nobody wants to be read to. But you don't have to go out and spend hours a day. You don't have to do it every day. But I will tell you, if you don't have a place to do it, you're going to be a lot less likely to do it. If it takes you 30 minutes to get to a place to spend 20 or 30 minutes to do something, kind of common sense, right? If it takes you 2 hours to do a 30-minute activity, are you going to do it really? As opposed to walking out your front door, having a good sidewalk, having a trail, having accessibility to places that you can safely walk and bike is the biggest driver of whether or not you are going to be physically active. That has been proven over and over and over and over. Accessibility is what it's about. So what are we doing? What are we doing locally to help? I can tell you Ohio's doing good things. We're not the top of the list, but when it comes to the Midwest, I deleted the slide that my policy director put in here because I still don't like it, but it's actually, I mean, I don't dislike it. We've been using this whole California, the Midwest thing in Ohio for a while with our state legislators. Every time I hear it, I go, oh God, nobody wants to hear that. But in some ways I like it because California is so far ahead of everybody with this kind of stuff. They are putting so much money into walking, biking, livability, active lifestyle development. It's kind of ridiculous. And it makes me a little sad. But I will say in the Midwest, we're doing great. And the Clean Ohio Fund is probably the biggest reason. First passed in 2000 by just a neighbor of all of ours, I'm assuming if we're all from here, but Governor Taft was the champion that really helped his administration developed and got the Clean Ohio Fund passed. We've got farmland preservation, green space conservation, and recreational trails in that program. $6.25 million a year go into the rec trail program. We had to reauthorize Clean Ohio in 2008. I was fairly new in Ohio at that point. I hadn't been here quite 2 years. 2008 wasn't the best time to put any sort of ballot initiative on that talked about money. I mean, this isn't a tax, it's a bond program. Doesn't matter. Most voters don't understand the difference between a tax and a bond, and all they see is, whoa, $400 million, that's a lot of money. If you remember the 2008 election economically, we weren't doing so well. There's this little financial crisis thing happening. We were kind of freaking out. Man, this is the worst time in the world to have this on the ballot. Everyone loves it, but everyone's freaked out about financial everything. And so there was a lot of consternation in the conservation community, the trail community. We're going, oh my gosh, it's a popular program, but I'm not sure it's going to pass. In this climate, nobody wants to vote for anything that's talking about spending money. It passed in all 88 counties. It didn't lose a single county in Ohio in 2008. There's a little skip in everybody's step that next day. Like, whoa, that was crazy. And it was a permanent renewal. So now it doesn't go back out to voters in Ohio. It is every 4 years, it is part of the governor's budget. They do have to allocate the bond sale. There has never been a problem since 2008, except 1 year in the Kasich administration, but we won't talk about that. Federally, transportation alternatives is the largest pot of money available. Ohio gets about $20 million a year. Now it's about $22 million a year. And these go towards not just trails, but all kinds of walking and biking and trail interests all over Ohio. A lot of these are in conjunction with highway projects. You're talking crosswalk enhancements. You're talking sidewalks. It runs the gamut. The rec trail program is about $1.5 million. That's purely a trail program. A lot of maintenance on existing trails. And then Safe Routes to School is a strictly it's within one or 1.5 miles of elementary and middle schools. How do we get kids safe ways to get to those schools? I will say it's been getting harder and harder with the school siting program in the Midwest. I mean, Ohio's not alone, but the consolidation of school campuses to these single campuses outside of town, it's making that really hard. It's making it really hard. And it's making it hard to justify those investments. It's not, if you have a school 5 miles out of town in the cornfield, it's not that you can't build a trail or a sidewalk from the community 5 miles out, but how many parents and how many kids are going to go 5 miles to school, right? So it's not even about whether or not you could build the facility, but even if you built it, who's going to use it when it's that far? So there's big issues around school siting that, frankly, people don't think about these issues being part of that, but the further out you're moving your schools, the further removed you're making the ability for these choices to be made. And that's a tough narrative. Where are we right now in trail development in Ohio? We've got 101 open. These are just multi-use trails. We do not track mountain bike trails, hiking trails, water trails, which are a big thing now. We are a multi-use trail organization. We're over 1,000 miles, 101 trails, about 44 projects that we track right now with almost 300 miles coming. All of this is tracked via our geo database, which started right about when I came, about 14 years ago. We started really ramping up our GIS program. We've now got 26,000 miles of rail trail. In that database, we have over 38,000 miles of multi-use trail. Because not all multi-use trail is rail trail. You've got just Greenway trails along rivers. You've got canal towpath. There's a lot of different types of multi-use trail. We have over 38,000 miles of trail on the TrailLink website. It's a free website. Not going to lie to you. We're asking you for your email. That's where that 1 million grassroots comes in. Believe me, that's been a sweet way to get email addresses. I'm not going to lie to you. My development department will say, hey, that's the coolest thing ever. And it really has helped. But for your email address, you get access to online maps and driving directions to trailheads. And I mean, so I'm not going to tell you it's free. It costs you an email address, and I'm going to be blunt with you. For that email address, you're going to get emails. Probably more than you want, and they're not coming from me. I yell at our development department, but believe me, I'm not nearly high enough to tell them what they can and can't do. So your email address will get you more emails from RTC, but it'll get you access to 38,000 miles of online trail maps, which is pretty cool. We've got some pretty awesome, I mean, I'm assuming you all know it, you're here. You're living in a pretty cool place if you like trails. And I get this from home too. I'm from Alaska. Spent my entire life in Alaska in the Pacific Northwest and Colorado for a few years, and get a lot of the, what are you doing in Ohio, man? That flat country, that this, that. I just show them a couple maps and say, well, I can go out my front door with my kids and ride for 200 miles on a protected trail without running into traffic and spend a whole weekend never dealing with anything. That's pretty cool. We can't do that at home. Like, we've got some pretty cool things in Ohio, and we should be proud of them. We should brag about them. The Ohio to Erie Trail, Cincinnati to Cleveland, it's about 90% done. I mean, it's right there. It's right there. And if you're not afraid of a little bit of road riding, and the road riding's not crazy, it's kind of back. I did it 2 years ago, finally, with some friends, because I gave a presentation and talked about it for 10 years. It's like, God, I should do the damn thing. So I did, and it was fabulous. So if you're into that, you can stay in a hotel or an Airbnb every night. You don't have to rough it. It's fabulous, and it's right out your front door right here. One of the best bike touring rides in the country right now, and if you don't know about it, you should. Pittsburgh to DC is done. I talked about that. Pittsburgh to Cleveland, receiving congressional interest. I want to get into that. We are releasing that study March 18th on the Ohio River in Steubenville. We've got about 40 miles to go. We're getting there. We're getting there. And once we get Pittsburgh to Cleveland done, I'm not going to use that. You can see right here, we will meet. So there's pretty much our 40 miles. Is that, and then this little gap here. Once we get that done, you frankly have, I just told you, Cleveland to Cincinnati is 90% finished. So once we can get that Pittsburgh to Cleveland gap, we're going to have Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton to DC done. Done. Small gap between, well, about 30 miles between Dayton and Richmond, Indiana to get to the Cardinal Greenway, and you've got about 65 miles of Cardinal Greenway going northeast. We're getting there. We're getting there with some pretty amazing connections, and you're in the epicenter of it here in Southwest Ohio. You're in the largest connected paved trail network in the country. If you didn't know that, I hope you do. You are there. You're sitting in it right now, and this is why I brag to all my friends out west who talk about the mountains and and yeah, those are great. I grew up in them. I love them, but hey, you don't have that. We have some really amazing facilities here that most of the country still don't realize. It's really, really special what we have here. I'm going to talk a second about policy issues, because we've done some really great things in the last 3 years in Ohio. We kicked off the first Legislative Trails Caucus in the country in 2017. We've got, in March, we formed the caucus with 36 members. These are both in the Senate and the House in Columbus. We have a Republican and Democratic co-chair. We are now over 40% of the State House are members of the Legislative Trails Caucus, almost evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, which is fabulous and necessary for a million reasons. We've done some really great things, from getting them out to activities on the trail so they understand why trails matter, and we've had hikes with their constituents in their home districts and things like that. But what we really did, well, actually I'll go back one. The thing that I think has been most impactful has been developing a short and long-term goal list with this caucus. And the first short-term goal really, frankly, was just a feel good Ohio Year of the Trails thing, which was great. I don't mean to demean it. It was cool. They did it, and that was fun. But we got them to kickstart DNR to undertake a new state trails plan, which was released late last year. And that new state trail plan is really driving the policy development that we need to really propel the trail system over the next 10 to 15 years. And we're in the middle of the activation phase of that trail plan. What are the action items? What are we going to do about making sure we implement that plan? And that's been huge. We hadn't had a new trail plan in almost 15 years, and the one that had happened before, frankly, got put on a shelf the day it was done and was never implemented because it didn't really make any sense and nobody paid attention to it. We're continuing to build the Trail Caucus. We'd like to get this over 50%. If you go to railstotrails.org/OH caucus, you can put in your name and address, and it will pop up your state senator and state representative and tell you whether or not they're on the caucus. And if the answer is no, there's an auto-populated message to tell them, why are you not on the caucus, and will you please join, and here's how. And we've made it as literally you could do nothing but click, click, click. If you wanted to add something personal, cool. If you don't, click, click, click. They get a message that says, well, join the caucus. And that's been amazingly successful, really. You don't overthink it sometimes. We've been doing a lot of cool things. I mean, we've been hosting these legislator awareness events. We did complete the state trail plan. We're really working closely with DNR and DOT on streamlining their planning processes. We're working to launch a statewide impact study, economic impact study. That was one of the enumerated goals of the caucus, and we're trying to get some funding through the Capitol bill to get that done. All right, so here's the one I didn't tell you about, but you should have already known because there's stickers and every other thing in the front of the room. This is the big, crazy, audacious new Trail Nation project from RTC. And it's both new and old. It was the original, one of the original goals of our founder, David Burwell. He talked about, from day one, a connected, multi-use trail like a rail trail that went from coast to coast. From day one, he said, how great would it be to be able to start here and go all the way across the country on a trail like this? And I'm going to escape out of this and show you a quick video to tease this up, and then we'll go from there. No, I don't want to see more videos. I want to see this video. There we go.
Imagine what's possible with a trail that connects the country. Picture pedaling across the entire country on a safe, seamless, and scenic pathway, taking in all the country has to offer from the most personal vantage point, the trail. A trail that will connect our own backyards to the next town, the next county, the next state, and all the way across the country. This is the Great American Rail Trail.
May 10, 1869 was an important day in American history. On that day that the Golden Spike was driven and the Transcontinental Railroad was completed. The rail banking statute was essential to the creation of RTC, and its purpose was to preserve these priceless rail corridors, but in the interim, they could be used as trail. The Great American Rail Trail had been a vision of our founder. David dreamed of a trail that would connect the country just as the railroads had a century earlier. We began to see that this trail could be a tremendous gift to the nation.
Peter Harnick was one of the co-founders of Rails to Trails Conservancy. I noticed the map in Peter Harnick's office, a blue pen for a project, a red pen for a finished trail. And one day I said, well, look at that, Peter. It's lining up. We knew the potential for a cross-country trail.
Washington, D.C. was always earmarked as the eastern terminus, being our nation's capital and being home to an excellent trail network. Before we committed to bringing this vision to life, we wanted to be certain it was viable. In 2016, we began scouting potential routes through Wyoming and Montana, and we found that there was a lot of enthusiasm and momentum within the trails communities there. This prompted us to conduct an 18-month route assessment study, which helped us identify the current preferred route that we're now excited to share with the world. This route is comprised of over 125 existing trails, which are already open for use.
Partnerships are the lifeblood of this project and our movement. Local trail managers and advocates are on the front lines of creating and maintaining trails along the route. Governors are key to elevating the route through their state, and their agencies lead on implementation. We can't do this alone, and we're fortunate to already be working with valued partners, and we're beginning to make headway in terms of policies and programs that will push the Great American forward.
The Great American Rail Trail is a gift to the nation. It connects this country in a way that we really haven't experienced before. We expect this to deliver a multiplier effect, not just for those who are using the Great American Rail Trail, but all those who get involved and are inspired to take this backbone across the country, but create more networks and spines. I hope that in the short term, people will just get out there and use it. There are many, many miles of trail that are open. They're ready for people.
So this project, like you heard, David really started this when he started RTC. He laid this out as a vision, and there, within the first 5 years of the organization, there was a goal set that we would not take this project on, that we would not promote the idea, we would not look for a viable route until we found a route that was already 50% complete. Again, I started 13 years ago, and every year at our staff retreat, starting 10 years ago when we really had a viable GIS program up and running to where we could really measure where we were, part of that annual staff retreat was always an update on the status of a cross-continental route. And I can tell you the entire staff, every time our GIS department got up and said, here's where we are, and it was under 50%, the entire room went, whew, sweet. All right, there's another year that we're not jumping into this insane pool, right? Well, I mean, we're all like, oh, how cool would it be to try to do this? But we all realized what a crazy thing it would be. So 3 years ago when they came up and said, 50.2, I'm like, whoa, uh-oh. All right, time to put our money where our mouth is, guys. And we, like that video said, we spent a year and a half ground truthing those maps that you see and making sure that what our GIS database told us was actually true, and then talking with leaders in every one of these states, 12 states in the District of Columbia, DOTs, DNRs, governor's offices, because we're a nonprofit of 40 to 50 people. We don't own a single stitch of trail. We don't manage any of these trails. If you get on any of the trails in the Miami Valley, they don't belong to us. We don't own them. We don't manage them. They're not ours. So we can't dictate to somebody what this trail is. We have to say, what do you guys think? There's a viable way to stitch this together across the country, and we think there's real value to you locally, regionally, statewide, to having something like this. But you need to tell us, like, do you believe in this? And if so, where do you think the route is? And that's tough, because when you go to Indiana, and I mean, I was in these meetings, you go to Indiana and we're meeting with the DNR and the DOT and Governor Holcomb's office, and we're saying, look, you guys, this is really exciting. We think there's a real value here to the state of Indiana. Where do you think it should be? I mean, they have competing cross-state trail initiatives. They've got one that goes straight across the national road, US 40, right through Indianapolis, and actually I think it goes over here to Terre Haute. And we're going, that's great, but the moment you hit the Illinois line, there's not a stitch of trail between Illinois and Missouri. So what Indiana might want may not make. So this was just a constant. I don't want to call it a dog and pony show, but it was kind of a dog and pony show. Like, we want you guys to tell us what you want, but what you want has to kind of have some sort of affiliation with what your neighboring states can do. It was a real interesting year and a half of dealing with not just what you want, but what's feasible vis-a-vis your neighbors, times 12 states. Whew. The maps are cool, and it kind of makes some logical sense now, but I can tell you the sausage making was not always pretty. But the maps are cool. Like, we're there, and people, and the process was so worth it. You know, it was that level of sitting down and saying, this is about you. You have to tell us. We can't tell you. And that's what makes this work. And that's what makes it so exciting, is that we're just announcing to the country and the world, like, this is this part of the country's vision. Like, we're facilitating it and we're pushing it and we believe in it. But this really was about hundreds and hundreds of people that we talked to all over the country in leadership roles saying, no, we believe in this too. This makes sense for us. So this isn't just RTC. But we did choose, and when we kicked this off in May, we chose 12 catalyst projects, trails in each of those states that we thought kind of with the spirit of what we were getting at to get across these states. So these are just a quick few pictures. We had the C&O National Historic Park in Maryland, which gets you from D.C. to the Pennsylvania border. The Panhandle Trail, which was the one trail that actually crossed the state line between Pennsylvania and West Virginia. The Ohio to Erie Trail, that's your Cleveland to Cincinnati, which a big chunk of that, not the entire thing, but a big chunk of that will host the Great American Route. The Cardinal Greenway in Indiana. The Hennepin Canal Parkway in Illinois. Had to include a winter scene, right? The Cowboy Trail in Nebraska. The Casper Rail Trail in Wyoming. The Headwaters System in Montana. The Trail of the Coeur d'Alene in Idaho. And the Palouse to Cascades in Washington. And this was our big event in May. We released the entire vision in May. It was this really cool, really complex, and insanely nerve-wracking, but it all went off amazingly smoothly. We did simultaneous Facebook Live events in 4 places around the country. We had television production crews at the Capitol here in D.C. We had one outside in Columbus, actually in the hillside neighborhood of Columbus, which was super fun, on the Camp Chase Trail. We had one in Iowa, and then we had one in one in Three Forks, Montana, and then one in South Cleveland, Washington. And we did this like revolving live television shoot via Facebook Live. So, oh my God, it's like this. Going into it, we're all going, oh my God, man, we're a nonprofit trail group, not a television production crew. What are we doing? But it was awesome, and it worked so well, and we had all these cool people, and it was really fabulous. And so that is the Great American Rail Trail. Help yourselves. We've got multiple magazines up there. If you're not aware of RTC, if you're a member, you get a quarterly magazine. So that's what. There's more than 4. There's quite a few magazines up there from over the last year. Great American stickers, by all means. Sticker up whatever you want to sticker. We want to see that logo and name everywhere so people start recognizing it, so don't be bashful about it. I never end a presentation without a picture of Alaska, so there you go. There's my bottom right. Yeah. But questions? I feel like I talked way too long, which is my MO. No, I did good. Pardon?
Are they working on...
Bottom right? Yeah, that's me and 2 of my crew members. That's Denali in the background. Yep, that's a hiking trail. Those are all hiking trails. Oh yeah, yep. Hiking trails. That's above the Eielson Visitor Center at like mile 70.
I mean, is there a bigger vision beyond even this? Like when the trail gets complete, like shuttle services going up and down the trail, like where you have all the places to stay, all the places to eat. All the places to, I mean, you start promoting that kind of thing, you start catering to the trail that way,
Yep.
It's going to grow at a faster rate than what you're talking about.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's already happening in the places where there's long-distance sections finished. D.C. to Pittsburgh, there are multiple outfitters along that trail that run shuttle services, that run guided tours. I mean, there's guided tours. You pay as cheap as $600 to $700 a piece, as expensive as $3,000 to $5,000 a piece, depending on how fancy you want to stay at night and how nice you want your meals and how much you want to be pampered. That's already happening.
Do you coordinate with League of American Cyclists and their trail network?
We work with them a bit. I mean, they don't really promote. Are you talking about the U.S. bike route system?
Yeah,
that.
Like the National Underground Railroad. Right?
Yeah, those are more. That's either Adventure Cycling. Adventure Cycling is really who's promoting those, and we worked really close with Adventure Cycling on the Great American. They're excited about having a off-road route to promote, because every one of their big long-distance routes, they like to use trails where they can, but they don't have a route that's fully off-road, and so their market is limited to people who are comfortable with road riding for a certain extent. And so they realize, my God, if there's a multi-thousand-mile off-road route, their market expands exponentially. So they're super excited about this. So yeah, we've coordinated with them, and they're, every chance they get to move like their cross-country routes to the trail as it opens up, they're all about doing it. It just makes their marketing so much better. Please?
So when you say these trails, now, are they paved or are some of them not paved?
Most are, but not all. No, but they need to, they're improved. The criteria for the Great American Route is you have to be a multi-use improved trail. You can't just say, hey, yeah, we have a corridor. No, but some of them are hard-packed limestone, and when done well...
So if you have a road bike, you can't ride on that kind of stuff. I mean,
depending on your road bike and depending on the time of year, I would say a well-done limestone trail. I mean, when I ride a road bike, most limestone trails I can ride on unless it's been raining. If it's a good limestone trail, but
path up north.
Yep.
In Cleveland, I mean, that's real iffy. I've done it, but
if it's wet, it's not fun. I agree. But if it's dry,
but then your gears get all yucky.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, is it worth it?
True.
So you really have to.
No, that's very true.
Right. So
That's
I was
very
just
true.
wondering how.
No.
These.
They at least improved limestone, but no, there's no guarantee that they're
And
paved.
on your website or in your magazines, do you say which parts are limestone, which ones are?
Yes, if you get on the Trail Link,
Information
Yep.
accessible.
if you get on the Trail Link website, every trail will have the surface type and reviews. You'll see people that have been on it the day before saying, "Oh, it was this, it was that," and facilities all the way through where there's trailheads and restrooms and water available and bridges and tunnels and roadside accommodations and all those sorts of things. All that's on Trail Link.
Real specific and real local. I live in Carlisle, and Germantown's, and I don't know how much you know about this area, but Germantown's the next town over. And daggone it, I drive between them, and there's this railroad track, and I want it to be
A trail. Yeah.
Is there anything?
Geez, I don't know. What do we do about those dang railroad tracks that we wish were trails, right? So the bottom line is there anything you can do about it? Sure. Is it easy or quick? No. The easiest thing would be, what is the local jurisdiction, either the town of Carlisle or Germantown and or MVRPC as the regional kind of umbrella, and looking to see whether or not it's been identified in the regional bike ped trail plan. That'd be the first thing. Like, is it on anybody's radar screen? That'd be the first thing to do. You can get on the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission website, look at the regional bike ped plan, take a peek, see if you can see that particular corridor. Has anybody highlighted it? Has it been something that people have looked at before? Is it something that people are thinking about? If the answer is yes, great, then there's some sort of recognition of potential. That doesn't necessarily mean something's happening tomorrow, but you're not the only one thinking how cool would that be, which is a step forward, right? But where things go from there, there's priorities. There's a lot of those around. Depending on where you live, everybody has something that they think is, hey, why isn't that this? And it becomes a priority. Is there a local kind of groundswell for it? If it's just you wishing it's going to happen, I hate to burst your bubble, but it's probably not. But if there's a lot of other people that are thinking the same thing, and then you start looking at property, who actually owns the dang thing, and wow, it's one owner over 5 miles. Well, there might be a way to make this happen. If you find, oh my gosh, there's 500 owners over 5 miles, reality of that being a trail get a lot lower. So it's all about initial support. Is there actually a groundswell of people that agree it's a great idea and it would do something really good? And then what are the possibilities of making it happen? And those things just happen it always has to really bubble up from that local level. So talking to your township or village or town leadership, and then talking to regional, and I don't want to. I hope that answers your. I mean, it's not an easy answer. It's.
I want to thank Eric for coming this evening and thank all of you for joining us. Good night.
Good night.